Humans are driven by an insatiable desire for acceptance, relentlessly seeking comfort in the warm embrace of belonging. It is an innate longing, deeply rooted in our psyche, compelling us to yearn for validation and recognition. Yet, the painful sting of rejection, an all too familiar companion in our collective human experience, reveals the darker side to this universal quest. For those of us fascinated by the intricate web of true crime, we witness this pursuit of acceptance often take a sinister turn. In the twisted labyrinth of human nature, where pettiness intertwines with the primal urge for approval, the consequences of unmet desires can be devastating. As we delve into the depths of human obsessions, we encounter a chilling set of events that emphasizes the vulnerability of our human condition. In the vast expanse of Arizona, amidst rugged terrain, lies the majestic Sunset Crater Volcano National Monument. This haunting testament to a cataclysmic eruption that ravaged the landscape a millennium ago serves as a poignant metaphor for the aftermath of unfulfilled acceptance. The once fertile land now stands barren, yet breathtaking in its desolation, a stark reminder of the enduring allure of beauty even amidst destruction. When this fiery inferno erupted, its impact reverberated far beyond the confines of the monument's boundaries. Fire fountains of molten rock, dancing with infernal grace, blazed across a vast 100-mile radius, their scorching tongues leaving an indelible mark on the land. Meanwhile, an ominous ash cloud shrouded the entirety of present-day Arizona, casting an eerie darkness that concealed secrets within its suffocating embrace. The aftermath painted a surreal canvas, a sandy, cinder-like forest floor where footprints could be swallowed by the winds of nature, guaranteeing anonymity for those who dared to trespass on its loose gravel paths. In the realm of true crime, the Sunset Crater serves as a haunting backdrop, a symbol of our insatiable hunger for acceptance. This case is a tale of unforgiving landscapes, where the fine line between acceptance and rejection blurs into a collage of darkness. Viewers should be advised that this case does involve instances of stalking, and it does get graphic in some areas.
Where do you live, Cynthia?
I live on the road. I don't have a home right now. I've been on the road for about six years.
And why is that? Is that just a lifestyle choice, or is there some reason for it?
No, it's not a lifestyle choice. I was a teacher almost 30 years in California, and I became overexposed to cell phones and Wi-Fi and routers and antennas and people's devices.
Meet Cynthia Schultz. She embodies the untold stories of life on the road. Once a dedicated school teacher in sunny California, Cynthia's life took an unforeseen turn when she found herself battling the invisible forces that permeate our technologically driven world. In Cynthia's narratives, she details the unsettling realities of a condition that defies easy comprehension. Electromagnetic hypersensitivity, or EHS, is often dismissed as a mere figment of the imagination. It's a controversial condition within the medical field. However, one thing is certain: within those who suffer from severe EHS, there emerges a disquieting and deeply personal struggle. Her choice to abandon her very social life for one of isolation in remote areas stands as a testament to the immense challenges faced by those affected by EHS, whether it's a real medical condition or not. You see, Cynthia did feel forced to abandon her old life as a school teacher and seek the most remote places. This was the only way to escape the ever-thrumming EMF found in nearly every community in America.
And so I was when they call it microwave radiation poisoning. So I had microwave radiation poisoning, and I had to walk away from everything to get in healthy areas.
And is it uncomfortable for you to be here where there's actually those types of electromagnetic waves happening?
And now I'm at the point where if I had a high exposure, sometimes I'll feel a couple hours later. So right now, thank you for what you've done for me, for having people turn things off. I right now feel okay.
Okay.
In the frigid twilight of late February 2020, Cynthia Schultz found herself navigating the desolate roads in her truck, laden with camping gear. A seasoned veteran in her chosen lifestyle, Cynthia had honed her survival skills, seeking refuge in the remote corners of the untamed wilderness. As the wheels of her truck crunched against the rugged terrain, Cynthia's nomadic existence took her deep into the vast expanse of the southwestern wilderness. The arid deserts and majestic landscapes surrounding Flagstaff, Arizona became her sanctuary. Sitting inside the unassuming confines of the ranger station, Cynthia found herself engaged in a conversation with a determined detective. The air was charged with anticipation as she unraveled her tales of survival and defiance, her voice a whispered testimony to the life spent evading the very forces that had propelled her into exile. In the eyes of the detective, a complex ocean of clues and revelations began to take shape, hinting at a possible connection between this person, Cynthia Schultz, who lives such an unconventional lifestyle, and the crime scene, found just yards away from her campsite.
Let me ask you, how far is that ranger station from where you were camping, roughly?
Like 4 or 5 miles, maybe 4 or 5 miles.
Okay, so you drove down there and wanted to check in with them?
So I think around noon I drove down and saw Neil in the kiosk and said hi to Neil, and I said, I'm out on 244, and he said there was a storm coming in, and I knew that and was kind of preparing for that.
Okay. So after you checked in with the ranger station, you got back to your camp.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, it is, yes.
Cynthia's camp sat nestled along a remote road, never intended for conventional vehicles. The ground beneath her feet, soft and sooty, resembled a blanket of loose sand. Towering coniferous trees provided a protective canopy, their clusters creating intermittent pockets of tranquility amidst the expansive terrain. Arriving the previous evening at around 6 p.m., she quickly set up her sleeping quarters, meticulously arranged her cooking area, and designated an area for the tasks of washing dishes and clothes. Her camp sprawled across an expanse of land adorned with the scattered trees that lent their watchful presence. Dry shrubbery and rugged rock formations shaped by nature's hand served as makeshift furniture. After eating breakfast and relaxing in the morning sun, Cynthia headed down to the ranger station. She wanted to chat with some of her acquaintances and to check the weather for the next few days, a crucial lifeline for those living in nature's unpredictable temperament. After learning of some coming rain, Cynthia headed back to camp to prepare.
I had been collecting wood, and then I came up around the back of my camp, and I saw in the distance, like, something white, and I could tell it was a body, and
The following morning, Cynthia found herself racing back to the ranger station in a panic. To the ranger, Cynthia stood out as an enigma, a figure both intriguing and unsettling. As she relayed the shocking discovery of a lifeless body nestled within the embrace of Arizona's wildlands. Uncertainty clouded their thoughts, casting a shadow of doubt upon the sincerity of her intentions. Was she telling the truth, or was she actually an accomplice attempting to conceal her involvement, putting on a theatrical performance to divert attention from her own dark deeds? Despite how the detective felt, he had to investigate all avenues, so he informed Cynthia that they would need to gather a buccal swab from her, DNA sample. Cynthia hesitantly obliged to the DNA request, realizing that her decision to report what she had found that morning may have landed her in the suspect pool. After all, she was the only one connected to the scene that they knew of. However, once the investigators retrieved the body for examination, they realized that this person had been lying there for over a month. Cynthia arrived only the night before, so investigators came to the conclusion that Cynthia had nothing to do with the crime scene other than finding it and reporting it.
So when I got there, the body had been as it had been discovered. None of our officers had touched her or changed positions. And so therefore she was lying face down. Her body was up against some shrubs or some small bushes, and I couldn't see her hands, I couldn't see her face. She was face down.
This is Lead Detective Nagel from the Coconino Sheriff's Department. She handled the homicide aspect of this case.
Something I immediately noticed was the way she was dressed. So I noticed that she was wearing a long dress and that her hair was up in a tight bun.
In the tranquil enclave of Farmington, New Mexico, nestled within the Lamp and Light Mennonite compound, a young woman named Sasha Krause inhabited a world defined by religious devotion and a distinctive way of life. She belonged to the Mennonite denomination, tracing its origins back to the Netherlands in 1525.
With regards to, violence or nonviolence, what is the Mennonite Church stance on that?
Our stance is, we call it non-resistance, and our beliefs go back to the founding of our church in 1525 in Zurich, Switzerland. That is a Bible doctrine that we've held to very closely.
As far as violence is concerned within the Mennonite community, I feel like pacifism is the word that best describes their stance.
So let me ask you more specifically, if someone were to attack you or to impose violence on you, what would your reaction be then in that situation, according to these beliefs?
According to these beliefs, we would not want to cause physical harm to anyone.
All right. So when you say non-resistance, does that mean not reacting or?
Well, okay, non-resistance is more than just not reacting in a violent way to someone that's assailing us. It is a way of life.
The Mennonites share core beliefs with the Amish, although with a more contemporary outlook. While embracing certain modern conveniences such as flip phones, Mennonites maintain their commitment to modesty and a stringent code of conduct. A balance between tradition and progress. Within the tight-knit embrace of the Lamp and Light community, Sasha thrived in an environment where familiarity extended beyond mere acquaintance. Everyone knew everyone, an intimate interconnectedness that underscored the cohesion of the community. Fluent in both French and Spanish, Sasha's passions extended to the realms of literature and writing. Above all, she possessed a deep love for the children of the community, which found expression in her role as a dedicated teacher for the preschool class at her church. Regrettably, it was on the very Sunday she disappeared that Sasha set out for the church, gathering materials for the following day's lessons. A heartfelt commitment that would be tragically unfulfilled. The church, typically vibrant with the energy of youthful voices, now stood hushed and somber as Sasha's family mustered the courage to file a missing persons report. An act that cast a shroud of apprehension over the once joyful congregation. On the fateful day of January 18th in 2020, the quietude of Sasha Krause's absence reverberated through the corridors as her family reported her missing. It was amidst this backdrop that Cynthia Schultz, the nomadic camper from earlier, stumbled upon a lifeless body near her campsite. Swiftly, investigators' focus turned to the possibility that the body belonged to Sasha, mostly because her attire didn't seem like a hiker or camper who would typically be found out this far into the wilderness. Meanwhile, in the heart of New Mexico's San Juan County, the search for Sasha and any viable leads had spanned nearly a month, the investigation teetering on the precipice of a cold case. However, a flicker of hope emerged as the resources of an out-of-state department converged to bolster their efforts. And even more crucially, they now had a body, the embodiment of tragedy, but also a pivotal piece in the puzzle that lay before them. Had Sasha's demise unfolded in the 20th century, the prospect of justice might have wilted into the shadows. The Mennonite compound, with its distinct characteristics, posed a unique challenge. a predicament often encountered by detectives before the advent of modern technology, a scarcity of surveillance cameras. Within the confines of the church from which Sasha was believed to have vanished, no surveillance system was installed. Thus, most of the investigation relied heavily on the testimony of church members who occupied the vicinity during the suspected time of her abduction. Their collective memories served as the lone fragments of potential truth. Yet beside the few eyewitness accounts, Sasha had not gone entirely untraceable. Although she didn't have an iPhone, Sasha did possess a device capable of leaving a digital trail. Through subpoenas, the police were able to unveil her movements. Soon, they were able to weave together a narrative that brought them closer to unmasking the perpetrator behind this crime.
You've identified just a few moments ago that you had Sasha Krause's cell phone information. Did that say anything about her travel on or around the time of her disappearance?
Yes. So her records were able to kind of clue us in as to when she, specifically her device, but we assumed her device, her cell phone was on her, when she left the compound. So we could see her activity throughout that day, and then we were able to see that the device left the compound area and started traveling west.
All right. You referred to the community lamp and light as a compound. Why did you use that word?
It's just a word that I'm used to saying by now. A lot of the people that live there use that word.
All right. And the cell phone information from Sasha, as we heard from Seb Dishman, indicates that she was traveling, assuming she had that device with her, to the west around 7:45 and beyond. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right.
In the veil of twilight between the hours of 7 and 8 p.m., an ominous sequence of events unfold. Sasha Krause set out to the church to get some Sunday school books, a routine that would soon be disrupted by her kidnapping. It remains uncertain whether she even reached the doors of the church before she was attacked and taken. Sasha, in her blue-gray dress and white fleece jacket, set forth on a westward trajectory, her cell phone silently in tow. Police were able to trace that phone into Arizona until it ultimately shut off at 10:58 p.m.
So in consultation with Mr. Dishman, did you determine that retrieving tower records or the data from the towers in that area would have been helpful?
Yes. So the reason why San Juan County Sheriff's Office hadn't gone that route yet was because up until my involvement, they really only had two locations. They had where Sasha had gone missing from and the area of Four Corners where her phone left the network. So once I became involved, we then had that third location where she had been found. And that's when the idea came up to do what we call tower dumps in those three locations to see if there was any common devices.
And we were talking about a tower, we're talking about a cell site, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And how many devices, unique devices, hit on all three of those towers?
Just one.
And whose was that?
That was Mark Gooch's device.
Cell tower dumps are a common investigative tool employed across various cases, and it held the potential to illuminate the shadows cast upon Sasha's disappearance. In a hypothetical scenario, a police department scrutinizing a bank robbery could procure a cell tower dump encompassing the pertinent time frame and unmask the identities of individuals present in the vicinity during the commission of the crime. Now armed with a trajectory, a defined point at which to start, and a destination, law enforcement could sift through records in search of any devices that paralleled Sasha's path as she ventured towards the rugged expanse of northern Arizona.
All right. Now, with that information, did you obtain his cell phone record?
Yes. So once we received the records from all of the cell phone companies for their towers, Seb and I worked on analyzing them, and that's when we had discovered there's only one device. Now, the records don't tell us who owns that device, and that leads me to have to write additional search warrants. In this case, AT&T, that's the company that we found that common device on, their towers, provided me a phone number and an IMEI, which I know was brought up during Seb's testimony, an International Mobile Equipment Identity number. And so I have those two numbers, And so what I did next was I wrote a search warrant to AT&T for the subscriber information and phone records for that phone number. And then I also wrote a search warrant to Google for that IMEI number for subscriber information.
Detective Nagel, driven by a steadfast determination, delved deeper into the labyrinth of information surrounding the owner of the cell phone, Mark Gooch. With each new revelation, the pieces of the puzzle took shape, leading Detective Nagel and her team to unearth the whereabouts of this individual, an address linked to the Luke Air Force Base. The perplexing connection between Sasha and Mark became the focal point of inquiry. Did they know each other? What brought them together on that fateful night? Mark Daniel Gooch, a 21-year-old mechanic working at Luke Air Force Base, emerged as a figure of intrigue in the investigation. Understanding the strategic significance of capturing him within the confines of his workplace, Detective Nagel surmised that it would be the opportune moment to confront him with the mounting questions surrounding his involvement in Sasha's disappearance.
Alright, so that's your Gmail, I got your address. You said you're from Wisconsin?
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you been in the Air Force for?
Been in the Air Force just over a year.
Okay, not too long.
Not too long.
Well, thank you for your service, first of all. I did not serve in the military myself, so I really admire people who choose to do that.
Yeah, it's very selective. It seems like not a lot of people make it.
So tell me about what that means. Like, you grew up on a dairy farm, you guys have animals, I'm guessing?
Yes, ma'am. We had milk cows, 2 game.
Is your family still around that far?
No, ma'am. So,
Oh, okay.
not so.
You guys siblings?
Yes, ma'am. 6.
Oh, wow, really? Okay, big family.
Detective Nagel begins by getting to know Mark a little bit more. It was now time for Detective Nagel to apply the pressure a little bit.
October. Okay. So it's really only been a couple months. In that last 6 months, have you traveled out of state anywhere?
Yes, ma'am. When I came down here, I drove my car. Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. So you drove from Wisconsin to
That's correct.
anywhere else?
Pretty much all. State of Arizona.
With measured precision, Detective Nagel confronted Mark with a pivotal question that held the potential to unravel the threads of truth. She inquired about any trips he made across state lines during his time at the Air Force Base. The weight of this question would bore into Mark because it presented him with a critical juncture, a moment where he could opt to either tell the truth or ensnare himself in lies. The cell phone data, an incriminating cohort, had traced his movement outside the confines of the state, compelling Detective Nagel to ascertain the accuracy of his response, eager to gauge Mark's forthcoming words against the backdrop of his digital footprint.
So you mentioned that you hadn't traveled anywhere, since you lived here. So you're probably wondering why I'm here. So I'm a detective. I'm with Coconino County Sheriff's Office. You know where that's at? Okay, so
It's not here.
No, I'm not local, no. So I'm from up north. Coconino County's like the northern part of our state. And I am working a homicide investigation. There was a girl named Sasha Krause that was killed. Did you hear about that case? So that's the case that I'm working. Any idea now why I don't want to talk to you at all? Yeah, that's exactly it.
Probably because I was probably traveling up to the New Mexico area, probably. Okay, Mark. Seems like you're probably telling the probable truth. Probably.
Yeah. So here's the deal. So your vehicle was picked up on that license plate reader in the general area on the same day actually that she went missing. So what I'm doing at this point is I gotta talk to everybody, as you can imagine. It's my job. Anybody who's in the area, anybody who could have seen something. I'm hoping really that maybe you have something that can help me. I don't know if you saw anything. You're Mennonite, or you're Mennonite, and Sasha was too. Did you know her or anything about the case?
No, ma'am. I don't know why.
You mentioned something about license plate scanner. Is there such a thing that you had in your possession?
We utilized them, but they were not utilized in this case.
Was there a period of time in this interview where you were feigning ignorance, that you perhaps didn't know everything?
Yes.
And what was the purpose for that?
The purpose was that I simply wasn't going to just start off the interview by telling him everything I knew. But I did want to indicate to him that I knew he had been in New Mexico.
So why were you in New Mexico that day?
I was plan on one, so I was checking out Mennonite churches. I traveled up to Flagstaff. I was hoping that ski resort was still open.
Yeah.
They were closed due to coronavirus starting up. And, so I figured I'd go check out Mennonite church up in the area.
So there were a few things, and you mentioned this in the interview, inconsistencies. Let me ask you about some of those. He mentioned in that interview that he attends church quite a bit. Anything you found in this investigation that would corroborate that statement?
I found nothing during the investigation that corroborated that he went to church often. I looked through his phone quite a bit and did not see any evidence that he actually attended those churches.
All right. He said in the interview that, and this is a quote, "I was hoping that ski resort was still open, but they were closed due to coronavirus starting up." This was a conversation you were having, obviously, in April of 2020. Is that right?
Yes.
The date you were talking about was January 18, 2020, right?
Yes.
Do you know when the COVID restrictions occurred at the ski resort, Snowball?
Yes, I do. The middle of March.
All right. That was a month or so after this January 18th trip, correct?
About 2 months.
Have you been able to confirm whether it was closed in January at all?
I don't know if it had closed at any other time in January, but I did confirm the ski resort was open January 18th of 2020.
Now, here's a twist that's worth exploring. So Mark adamantly claims he decided to go on a little vacation to that ski resort, only to be met with its closure due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But hold on to your butts, guys, because let's rewind the clock a little bit to mid-January of 2020. Remember when the world turned upside down and it shut down and everybody locked themselves inside? Well, guess what? The whole lockdown didn't kick in until March. So how in the world did Mark stumble upon a shuttered up ski resort like something straight out of The Shining, all the way back in January? Something doesn't quite add up, does it? And I'll tell you exactly why. Mark is lying.
All right. And at this point, to be fair, he was already a murder suspect, right?
Yes.
You had the intention at some point, even that day, to arrest him. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay.
Even before coming face to face with Mark, Detective Nagel had an unwavering certainty that she would be making an arrest that day. And as Mark Gooch stumbled through his interview in that cramped interrogation room, he was unknowingly digging himself into a deeper and darker pit. The investigation had a solid conviction. Mark Gooch was the man behind the brutal murder of Sasha Krause in New Mexico. But here's the burning question. Why? What could possibly drive a young man, seemingly with his whole life ahead of him, to cross state lines and commit such a chilling crime against someone he didn't even know? What's even more curious is Mark's claim of minimal contact with his siblings, until those fateful weeks leading up to Sasha's disappearance. Suddenly, he and his brother Sam were thick as thieves, communicating more in a couple of days than they had in years combined.
You want to start from the beginning and kind of...
I believe you think I know more than I do, and
So explain what that means. You know what I mean? If I know more than you do, help me understand that.
I don't think this is really a productive conversation for me, and
Do you want to tell me about tonight?
no, sir.
Okay. Do you want to tell me why you guys came halfway across the country to pick up a gun?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you understand why you're here in the room?
Yes, sir.
Here's the deal, Sam. A part of me feels bad right now because, like I told you back in Wisconsin, you weren't a focus. You weren't a suspect. And now, because of some bad choices, you're in some serious trouble.
And here's where it gets even juicier. On the very day that Sasha vanished, January 18th, Mark and Sam engaged in a marathon phone conversation that lasted a whopping hour and a half. This unprecedented level of communication raised some eyebrows, but that's not all, folks, because investigators suspected that Sam Gooch, Mark's brother, embarked on a cross-country trip from Arizona to Wisconsin to retrieve the .22 caliber rifle responsible for Sasha's tragic demise. Fast forward to Mark Gooch's arrest, which went down in April of 2020, almost 3 months after the murder shook the community to its core. The events that unfolded on January 18th were far more sinister and convoluted than Mark Gooch let on. Let's peel back the layers and dive into the disturbing timeline of that day. It all started at 8:30 in the morning when Mark embarked on a drive to Flagstaff, Arizona, supposedly to visit the ski resort. But here is the kicker, you guys. He didn't even stop by the resort that was, again, open. He simply cruised right by it, leaving us questioning his true intentions. Instead, he made a pit stop in Caliente, Arizona to grab a bite at McDonald's. At precisely 4:14 p.m., Mark arrived at the Lamp and Light compound in Farmington, New Mexico. Armed with binoculars, he assumed the role of watchful observer, surveilling and stalking the neighborhood. All the while, he maintained sporadic communication with his brother Sam. This eerie surveillance mission persisted for a chilling 3 hours and 30 minutes. The last text message from Mark's phone was sent at 6:24 p.m. Between 7 and 7:45 p.m., Mark abducted Sasha, clad in her gray dress and white fleece jacket. Their destination? That cell tower dump points to Sunset Crater in Arizona. Just a warning, the next part is a little bit graphic. The details surrounding Sasha's untimely demise remain shrouded in uncertainty. What we do know is that her hands were bound with duct tape and the back of Mark's rifle struck her head with force before an execution-style gunshot finally ended her life. Sometime after midnight, phone records reveal a haunting detour as Mark deviated from the highway, depositing Sasha's lifeless body at 1:13 a.m. For 2 hours and 21 agonizing minutes, his phone vanished from the network. Then, at around 3:30 in the morning, a blip on the network signaled Mark's return as he made his way home. He checked in through the security gate at Luke Air Force Base around 7 a.m., seemingly unfazed by the heinous act he had just committed.
We have a detective talking to Sam right now.
Okay.
In Wisconsin. Okay? And so I want you to know that for this main reason. Sam's telling us some stuff, and you're talking to me, and I want to just make sure, what both of you guys are telling us lines up. And what I know a little bit about from what Sam said is, sounds like something's going on here as far as like maybe you have hard feelings against the Mennonite church, or maybe like a grudge or something like that.
So let me get this straight. You're talking to Sam right now, huh? Mm-hmm. So it sounds like I need to get a lawyer because you're trying to pin something on me.
Well, I read you your rights at the beginning of this.
Yes, ma'am. And I'd like to see a lawyer now.
You would like to speak with a lawyer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I'm not going to ask you any more questions then.
As the realization dawned upon Mark that law enforcement was onto his trail, panic set in and he hastily sought a lawyer. But it was a futile attempt to salvage a sinking ship. Detective Nagel, armed with a plethora of incriminating evidence, was prepared to bring Mark to justice for the heinous crimes of kidnapping and murdering Sasha Krause. To the outside world, it may have seemed like Mark's descent into the clutches of law transpired in the blink of an eye. However, the truth is far more sinister. Like a meticulously constructed trap, Mark had been laying the groundwork for weeks, methodically weaving the intricate wires of his plan. His calm and unassuming facade shielded his true intentions, ensuring that no one would catch him until it was far too late. The arrest of Mark Gooch sent shockwaves through the community in April of 2020. In the interrogation room, he stubbornly clung to his proclamation of innocence, desperately attempting to control the narrative. But his attempts at damage control only served to paint a damning picture. From promptly detailing and deep cleaning his car after the murder to enlisting the help of his brother Sam to wipe his cell phone and Google accounts, Mark's actions betrayed his guilt. These were not random acts, they were calculated maneuvers learned from his dark fascination in his free time. However, these efforts proved futile against the overwhelming mountain of evidence. Yet, the lingering question that remained for investigators was the motive that propelled Mark down his path. The truth, once concealed, would be laid bare for all to see, leaving no room for doubt or even any sympathy toward Mark.
Earlier, when we were talking, you mentioned how when you're not born into the Mennonite church, we just thought we were an outsider. Like, you're kind of an outsider compared to like people we're born in. Sasha was like that too. Did you know that? Her family was not born into the Mennonite church. So I'm wondering if you're willing to kind of tell me. I noticed I just saw a little bit of an emotion in you when we talked about that. Is there something that happened to you in the Mennonite church that upsets you?
Not really, it was just a way of life, and I didn't really like it, and I was happy to be out of it.
Okay. So Mark, what I do for a living is talk to people.
Understood.
And I just feel like I can read people a little. I know I don't know you. I'm not going to even pretend I do. But there's something there. And is it just something you don't want to talk about? Something that happened that made you leave the church?
No, man, I pretty much left church when my parents decided to leave.
You remember back when Mark casually dropped hints about his upbringing? His friends knew he hailed from a dairy farm in the backwoods, and that he had a bunch of siblings scattered across the country, and that he had joined the Air Force to escape his upbringing. But what remained concealed, shrouded in secrecy, was the fact that Mark Gooch was raised a Mennonite. Little did his closest friends know, Mark had been skulking around Mennonite communities and churches, surveilling them, ever since he and his brothers had cut ties with the church about half a decade earlier. He maintained an open line of communication with Sam and their older brother, Jake, a Virginia State Trooper, sharing updates on his eerie exploits. It was on that day, January 12th in 2020, when Mark fired off a text to his brothers while covertly observing a Mennonite church near Luke Air Force Base.
Even this morning, surveillance was boring. A bunch of old people without much to live for, and clearly not the Mennonite people we grew up with. Sad to say, another disappointment.
A few months later, sometime in March of 2020, the group chat was active again with more Mennonite news.
I have it.
All right. So your brother Jake, the police officer, indicates he just gave a Mennonite a ticket. This is a group text, right, to you and Mark Gooch?
Correct.
Right. And what was the date and time for that?
March 14th, 2020, 8:48 a.m.
And what was Mark Gooch's response?
Fuck yes.
Fuck yes, and how many exclamation marks?
4.
All right, and then what's his next text from Mark Gooch?
I hope you treated M like shit.
I didn't hear you. I hope you treated what?
I hope you treated M like shit. EM.
Thank you. What was your response?
Haha, hell yeah. Tell them the VA State Police doesn't like cultists.
Cultists. Did you believe that Mennonites were a cult?
No.
You were just joining in the banter?
While I believe there's certain things about the Mennonite life that can be seemed cultist, I don't believe they are cultist. That was part of the banter.
Yikes, that's embarrassing, Sam. To be forced to read your bigotry out loud in front of a judge in a packed courtroom.
Okay. Jay Gooch responded to your text, right? What was his response?
I did, LOL.
And then Mark Gooch responded.
Haha, fuck yeah.
How many exclamation marks there?
3.
All right, and then Jay Gooch talks about coughing. Can you read that?
I coughed on him so he would spread corona to the wedding they were going to, LOL.
And what was Mark's response?
Aha, that's fucking hilarious.
The Gooch brothers harbored a seething resentment toward the Mennonite church and the community in general, viewing it as nothing short of a cult. Their indignation stemmed not only from the unconventional practices within the community, but also from a deeply personal place: the Gooch's family perpetual outsider status. You see, Mark's parents had made the choice to join the church just before starting their family. And as far as the brothers were concerned, this placed them in an inferior category within the community. In their eyes, a clear divide existed between those who were born into the church and those who had joined later in life. The latter were regarded as second-class citizens, perpetual outsiders destined to be treated with a hint of condescension. It was a distinction that gnawed at the very core of the Gooch brothers' being, fueling their simmering anger and ultimately driving them to sever ties with the Mennonite community. In a sudden realization, it seemed as though the weight of Mark Gooch's ill-conceived statements came crashing down upon him. Perhaps at that very moment, the gravity of his misguided thoughts became glaringly evident.
What do you think should happen to the person that did that to Sasha?
As far as, like, what are you getting at there?
But if we caught the person who killed her, what should happen to them?
Well, you should probably let the law deal with it. Or maybe the Mennonite community has a way of doing things differently.
Oh, Mark. You don't know what should happen to whoever did this to Sasha? Well, it appears that you have underestimated the power of the American justice system. Despite its flaws, which are many, the heavy wheels of justice churn inevitably forward. And they know exactly what to do with convicted murderers.
A jury in Flagstaff has convicted an Air Force airman for the murder of a Mennonite woman from New Mexico. Mark Gooch is facing life in prison after being convicted. He was also found guilty of kidnapping Sasha Krause in January of 2020 from the Mennonite church where she was gathering material for Sunday school. Her body was found hundreds of miles away on the outskirts of Flagstaff more than a month later.
I've thought long and hard about it, and I think this case is truly the most senseless case I have ever presided over. I have thought, since the defendant was found guilty by the jury, why he would have committed this crime, this horrific abduction and murder of an innocent person, that he didn't, even if he knew the person, it wouldn't be justified, but the fact that he didn't even know her is also so very senseless and really mind-boggling. It's just to wrap your head around what occurred in this case, it just makes no sense.
Mark Gooch, the convicted perpetrator of this senseless crime, has been sentenced to spend the rest of his days behind prison walls, a life devoid of any chance for parole. Mark's quest for belonging took a sinister turn, finding a deep-seated rage toward the Mennonite community that persisted long after his departure from the church. This rage, once maybe just a flickering ember, grew into a twisted and convoluted force within Mark. It consumed him, driving him to spend every moment of his free time away from the military base, lurking and observing innocent strangers. He yearned to inflict pain upon the Mennonite church, to strike at the very heart of their community. His victim, Sasha, labeled as randomly chosen, wasn't random at all. Mark wanted so badly to get back at the Mennonite community, he stole from them a vibrant Sunday school teacher. Her loss would reverberate through the Mennonite community, a wound that would run so deep and leave a lasting scar. Listen, you guys, not everyone is going to like you or accept you. And it's not easy, trust me, I get it. But at some point in life, we have to mature. You have to accept it. It's a part of life. And it's a lesson that Mark Gooch failed to grasp, even in the face of his conviction. He still stubbornly clings to denials, refusing to admit his guilt. Mark's actions were a manifestation of his twisted anger, a venomous act intended to exact vengeance upon a group that he perceived as an adversary. Within the intricate terrain of the Arizona coniferous forest, where nature weaves its rugged beauty, Mark Gooch's footsteps now form permanent imprints in the bedrock of infamy. The evidence, like a resounding chorus, echoes through the world, a somber reminder of the darkness that can emerge from the depths of the human soul. Thank you guys for sticking around till the end. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, stay safe and take care of each other.